things, and then are able to pull out from that and go into the more traditional third-person gameplay?
Yeah. So that's done very earlier on in the project. We start with the trailer. So that would be the first trailer we saw where like Joel walks in and like sees Ellie playing guitar. All that tech was developed back then. That was, like how do we come up with these hands that are more real? Because hands are very, very hard to
Yeah.
to rig, to model, to make it look believable. The knuckles and squishy fingertips. So all that was developed with the TD team and the cinematic team to come up with something that could be animated, that could, feel like the strings are pressing against the fingertips. So it's a back and forth to get that look. Once the look is established, then it's easier to propagate to different characters. But definitely it took time. Not just the guitar and the fingers, also the facial. Like we redid this time, the facial rig was completely redone from Uncharted 4, just to be able to be more to have more fidelity, and then also like muscle deformations. Like if we see the hanging scene when Abby gets hanged. Like we see like the veins and the face getting red. So it's like, that's very hard to do. But that grounds the player into believe that it's in this world and everything has consequences and feels what the players are feeling. Getting red, eyes bulge. So it's all a collaboration, TDs, Neil's vision, cinematic team, and then feedback from the whole studio, effects, shaders, character artists. So it's not just animation, it's all the departments together.
Part one certainly had its memorable animal moments. The giraffe and monkeys, I think, jump out for a lot of people. And I'm curious what the process was for part two to make them a bigger part of the game, certainly with the horse and dogs. And I'm curious what that experience was like and how you brought that greater realism to the game and to those types of creatures or animals.
It all comes back to being a hero character, the horse and the dogs. So we thought we need to motion capture this to bring it to the realism. So we went that route, and that was challenging, but it was super fun. It was really interesting what the limitations are, having a smaller space, you couldn't get to full sprint, so we had to make some tweaks to make that happen. So we motion capture, but we also have a very talented animation team that takes that data and needs so much adjustments. And it gets complex and complex and more complex with animals. But I have to say that the result, I think it speaks for itself in not just horses, but also the dogs. The in-game facial system is something that it came together pretty late, but it adds so much to part two compared to any other game we've made. Like the players and the NPCs and the bodies and the enemies have emotions, so they could, if they're saying a line with they're smiling or like they're laughing, they would communicate that on the facial expressions. And like from the dialogue team, where they decided that they wanted to like call the enemies by name, which means that gives such a you're gonna kill someone because you have to in this world, but they have a name and they have friends like you have. So everything, it just makes the experience so much more robust.
A moment that has stuck with me, and the first time it happened, I was like, did I just hear what I thought I heard? And I was out getting my revenge, and I got my revenge on an individual, and then someone else yelled out, like, they killed Sarah. And I was like, oh, I did kill Sarah. These are people. They're not just not idle animating things that you go and take out. It's like they have a life. And even, Soldier 114, now I know is Sarah. She has someone that she cares about and that cares about her, and I killed her.
Brooke? God damn it, where are you? Amir? You with me? Come on. Someone took out Amir! Someone's out there! Spread out.
It's incredible. It's emotionally traumatizing, but in all the right ways. And there's a theme that I feel kind of runs through it of revenge, certainly, and violence, a cycle of violence. But I also feel like I keep hearing versions of you got to find something to fight for. You got to have a reason to fight. And I think in game, the way I've kind of interpreted that is you have to have a reason to live. But I also think characters in this brutal world take it literally and fight. Like they are fighting. And I'm left with the feeling of, is any of that worth it? Is any of it worth it? And I don't know if I have an answer, which makes all those difficult moments prior to that more difficult.
To me, that's what the games are about. At least the games we make, they're meant to mean something. Like if you end up playing a game and then you finish it and then there's no emotion or there's no investment, there's no care about anything, then it's to me, I wouldn't be satisfied. So if I'm playing a game and it evokes these reactions, it's when like your brain start working, you want to play it, you want to keep playing to see what happens, whether it's right or wrong. You're living this journey with, in this case with Ellie, you're living this journey with these characters, and that's what you're going through. Is this there has to be conflict at some point. But we give the stealth tools to be able to avoid and make your own decisions. And like, if you don't want to do it, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can really, really find ways around those difficult moments. And I understand that we try to give every character a purpose, even when we have these crowd sequences or like these populated areas. Those are so hard because it's like, okay, how do we populate this with this amount of people that they are having a purpose in this world? And believe me, that is not an easy thing. But we want the players that play that is, yeah, you're here. And all these people, maybe they're the people you fought before.
Is this the scariest thing that you've written, in your opinion?
Gosh, I don't know. That's such a... I think everything you write should be scary for you to write. I think writers have a responsibility to write what scares them because it is historically the most honest and usually the things people are most hungry to hear and see and relate to. Shame dies in the light, right? Like we all want to feel seen, and if you're not saying something that feels vulnerable, I don't know, what are you doing? So yeah, I think this is scary. I don't know if it's the scariest. I think everything I work on is super scary. There's a lot of me in this. There's a lot of me in Ellie, in Abby, in Dina, in Lev. Those are my main homies. And some of those things were sort of, writing about trauma can be scary to write. You're putting it on the page, but you think about like 17-year-old me or the 17-year-olds that are out there now, and you're like, look, I want to give you an example of, life can be hard, but you can pick yourself back up and you're not going to be the same person you were before. But you can be somebody cool and interesting, and you can enrich other people's lives, and you can have a beautiful life for yourself, and you can grow. And so, I don't know, writers should always write shit that scares them. That's my thesis.
I'm now playing the game again and looking at different parts and playing with the photo mode. It's like, how fucking lucky am I, right? Like, how lucky that I have this job and I get to work with all these talented people, and like I get to even do this podcast and talk to you in depth about what we're trying to achieve, and that people care about what we make. It's pretty incredible. And like, as disheartening and as some of these leaks have been, right, that negative feeling doesn't come close to the positive of like what it was like to go on this journey to make this game and come out on the other side and make something that we're so incredibly proud of. Nothing can take that away.
Next time on the official The Last of Us podcast.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
Again, I would do it all over again. I love this game so much, and I love this character, and after 8 years of playing this character, I'll go anywhere with her.
For me, like, loving Ellie was not a job. That was like, it was easy.
I'm just a girl, not a threat.
I think they should be terrified of you.
The official The Last of Us podcast is produced by PlayStation and Spoke Media. It's hosted by me, Christian Spicer, and written by Brigham Mosley. Our Sony PlayStation team includes Charlie Yater, Christian Cardona, and Carrie Surtees. Our Naughty Dog team includes Arnie Meyer and Scott Lowe, and our production team is Carson McCain, Kelly Kolf, Trey Jones, Reyes Mendoza, and Alicia Force. This episode was mixed by Evan Arnett, who contributed additional sound design and music. Today's episode included interviews with Neil Druckmann, Hallie Gross, Anthony Newman, Kurt Margano, Almudena Soria, and Alexandria Neonaki. Our executive producers are Aaliyah Tavakolian and Keith Reynolds. Thanks so much for listening.
When we first meet Ellie in Jackson, she's 19. She's going out on patrols. She is a little bit more confident in who she is. She's learned how capable she is. She's learned so much from Joel, and she's absolutely a capable fighter, a hunter. She knows her strengths and her weaknesses and knows how to strategize and use those to her advantage. And she's a big contributor to the community in Jackson. Hey.
Hey.
What's up, Joel?
Just checking in. Folks are, talking about how impressed they are with you and how well you're helping out.
It's good.
Yeah. I want to show you something. Just give me 1 second.
What's this?
Some folks call this thing here a guitar.
Funny.
You want to hear something?
Okay.
Okay. Promise me that you won't laugh.
I won't laugh. I won't.
I'm trusting you.
Welcome back to the official The Last of Us podcast. I'm Christian Spicer. Last episode, we skimmed the surface of The Last of Us Part 2, talking with some of the people who helped bring this incredible game to life. But today, we're taking the full plunge, diving deep into story points and talking about one of the two playable characters, Ellie. So yes, warning, we are moving into full spoiler territory here. So if you haven't finished the game yet, proceed with caution.
It's funny. It's in some ways they both found what they're looking for. It's more true for Joel than it is for Ellie. They found a place to settle down, to find society that values them. Joel has, in the journey of The Last of Us 1, has, like, as cliche as that sound, learned to love again. It's like learned to accept that love comes with pain and has brought everything that comes with love into his life. But at a cost where now his relationship with Ellie is a bit strained. Ellie can tell that, something happened in that hospital that is off. And even for no other reason, that so much of her journey, and she experienced so much loss by the end of the first game. And it felt meaningless to her because in her idea, it was like, it would all be worth it if at the end of it, there could be a cure. There could be something positive that comes out of it. And the only thing that came positive out of it is she got this father figure, right? Everyone that she loves constantly comes in and out of her life, except this one dude that has stuck around no matter what. So she got that. But now what does she do? So she's kind of aimless and she doesn't know what her purpose is and she's trying to find it. But she's got this thing that's kind of nagging away at her. I was like, what happened? What happened? And she's like, she believes she could bury it, she could suppress it, but it keeps coming back up. And that's what we see in the flashbacks. With each flashback, it comes more and more to the surface. Like she can't help but go find out herself. It's like that trust is not quite there.
At this point, Joel and Ellie's relationship, Ellie knows that Joel lied. And not only that, he's killed the people that could have saved humanity. And that weighs on her. And also at this point, she hasn't met anybody else that's immune, or at least they haven't told her. So she also carries the weight of knowing that her death could have saved people. And knowing something that huge could have been your contribution to the world. I mean, how would you even find your purpose in anything else? Because you're like, well, if that was my purpose, everything else feels less than.
Making a vaccine would have killed you. So I stopped them.
Oh my God.
But that chance was taken away from her, and it's a confusing thing, and it's a confusing emotion because she's also dealing with the fact that Joel wanted to save her because he loves her, and they connected and they became family because of this journey that they were on together. And she knows that, but it's intensely confusing. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to have that responsibility of, well, the world wouldn't be like this anymore if I'd given my life. But I believe, at least how I was playing it throughout this game, is she carries that guilt with her always. And that kind of guilt can rip you apart. It can make you angry and sad and frustrated and can cause anxiety and depression.
I think to the challenges, the moments that were really hard to pull off, and Joel's death is one of them. Is one that was a hard scene to write, and it was a hard scene to prep for, and it was a hard scene to shoot. And then trying to pace it out properly and trying to make it land was really hard. I remember like the last few weeks of production on the music for it, which is like this beating, almost like a heartbeat that just gets more and more like grimy and intense as the scene goes on. So it's like there's this dread that's building. Whereas like with Sarah's death, it ended up being, I think, sad. You feel for Joel and you feel the tragedy of it. And while this is also tragic, there's Sarah's death is surprising, where Joel's death feels inevitable. But I think even with knowing what's happening, and you tell me what you think, I'm really curious to hear it, but we decided, just the way it was coming together, I was like, oh, this scene is more about dread.
It was tragic, but it felt, I think, as you mentioned, to me, Joel was living just to die. Like, Joel's life was going to catch up with him. Whether it's when he was a smuggler with Tess, or, even I could see it have been a conflict in Jackson. Like, the character of Joel, at some point, his actions were going to have repercussions. And so witnessing it in that way, it was something where, yeah, I literally knew it was coming. But in those moments, you see, and I think the actors' performances, the realization of, I'm Joel and this is my brother Tommy, or I forget, maybe I'm Tommy and it's my brother Joel. And it's like, oh.
Hey, I'm Tommy. That's Joel. What's your name?
Abby.
Abby, are you okay?
The way Abby reacts in that moment, you're like, oh shit, it's going down. And then I loved the moment, and I imagine there was some debate on it, but experiencing it from Ellie's perspective, where kind of the ringing in her ears and the shock and the scream, and it's not clear. It's emotion that in which you witness that. And I feel like I was very much in Ellie's shoes in that moment. So even though I knew it was coming, it still landed like a bag of bricks.
Yeah, it's funny again. You think about iteration and how important iteration is to building something that's good. Because like so many early versions, Ellie was not there. Ellie just saw the aftermath, and Tommy had to like tell her everything that happened. And then again, I don't remember whose idea it was or how it came to be, but it was like someone said, "Oh, Ellie should be there." It was like, oh, that became, oh, of course, this whole thing is predicated on her feeling the most intense hatred. She's got to see the act, um, which I know is cruel but essential for the story.
It's what sets off the journey. And I think when I first heard that Ellie was going to be there for that, I didn't want that for her. But at the same time, I knew that that's what needed to happen for the story. And we all knew that it was going to be heartbreaking and horrible for Ellie to see that. I think I just personally, for me, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Which I think is exactly why they needed to do it.
Neil jokes about the fact that we debated how this happens. And I was so fearful of how this would be presented. And I remember sitting in Neil's office on the couch next to him, and he starts telling me how this whole thing goes down with Neil. And I think I told this the first time. I'm sitting there with notes and I'm diligently taking notes. I'm like, okay, fantastic. So, trying to be a dutiful student. And then we get to the moment and we kind of move forward. And I just stopped and I was like, man, I need a second. Because it was literally as if someone just told me that someone very near to me had just died. And I realized that I hadn't grieved. It's almost like finding out someone is terminally ill, and you go through that process and you're like, okay, we know this is going to happen, and we prepare for it, and you go from like, maybe you won't. maybe this is all a bad dream and maybe you'll get better. And then you're like, no, you're in hospice and you're shooting the scene. And then it's done.
I'd love to talk about that part a little bit more, where Tommy and Joel save Abby's life. What would they have needed to do to prevent Abby from killing Joel in that moment? Like, that's her life's mission, is to go kill this human being, who then the only reason she's allowed to accomplish that singular focus is because he saves her. Like,
dude, okay. This is why this game, and I'm not saying the first one or the second one, I'm saying this experience, that's why it's part 1 and part 2. It's not a sequel. This thing is the entirety of the story that we're telling. Moments and conversations and characters echo from part 1 into part 2. And it was even one of the earliest lines that you ever heard from part 1 in the trailer, which was Earl Brown. When you get to Billstown, and there's this conversation with Bill, and he goes, once upon a time, I had someone that I cared about, and I found that thing is only good for one thing, that's to get you killed. This is what happens when you care. And it's the same thing of why it is calling back to Sarah without him having to reference Sarah. It was like, because you didn't care, because you weren't diligent, because you weren't aware, people will get hurt. And you can't care about people because they will die. And when they die, you will be hurt. So you don't care. So you see Joel saying, that's why he rejects Ellie in the very beginning. He was like, I'm not taking her. She's just cargo. This is how we can rationalize if something goes wrong, it's just cargo. Worst case scenario, the cargo gets lost. Worst case scenario, the cargo dies. And that's how Joel justifies it to himself. There's this constant reminder to Joel of every time I care, every time I show my humanity, it catches up to me. But it's the same question that is asked and posited philosophically at the end of the first game. Why not just sacrifice Ellie for the sake of mankind? This is a philosophical argument that's the cable car argument. The degrees of tragedy and depravity that we will allow ourselves to indulge in is completely dependent upon the context of our own experiences. For Joel, sacrificing her is sacrificing humanity. So, to not care about someone is just as bad as being a murderer. Now he understands. Now he is working. He's trying to do everything he can to make penance for the wrong that he did to Ellie. And that man is making his bed up. He's doing the dishes. He's taking out the garbage. He's doing everything he can. I'll save this person's life if it makes me right with her. I'd rather make a wrong decision, but show that I've grown. And that's why he's like, it's you. You're the one that takes me down. It was this moment of recognition of like, that's when the other shoe drops. When he starts looking around and realizes, I let my guard down and I don't know my exit and I'm surrounded.
Joe. Y'all act like you heard of us or something.
Because they have.
It's that moment from when the lion is trapped.
Joel, get up. Joel, fucking get up. Please stop. Please don't shoot.
Man, that scene, I think boy, I'm getting emotional. I think I was dreading shooting that scene. And it's the scene in the game that is the most devastating, of course, because we are losing a character that we all deeply care about. But when we started shooting that scene, it was awful. Like I didn't want it to be happening. And I know that was the story, but it was a tough week on the job. And it's hard to describe because I feel like that particular week of filming, I was in some ways on autopilot because I was just kind of trying to protect my emotions in a weird way. But at the same time, as an actor, you have to let all that out. And I didn't know what my reactions were going to be. I mean, obviously the scene called for yelling and being upset and crying, but I didn't realize how much anger was going to be coming out. And, obviously had to be restrained. I was like, you guys better be restraining me because I'm going to fucking get up and I'm going to go try to do something if you don't hold me down. And I think that was incredibly helpful because you can hear the strain. Boy, that was a tough day.
I'm reminded of what Neil told me with this scene with Sarah is just look at her. And I was compelled to look at Ashley. So similarly, in the way that Hannah really shepherded me and pulled me through that scene with Sarah, I would say that if that moment is impactful and means something to anybody, it's entirely because Ashley pulled me through that scene.
Joel's death was by far the hardest one. It was the hardest one to figure out how far do we take it. And I always knew like we wanted to find a line and then just go a little past that line because it needs to feel really uncomfortable, cruel to get the kinds of feelings we're after for this experience. This was such a long shoot. It was like the longest cinematic shoot for any game we've done. And feeling really nervous about how that scene is going to be. And I especially know the attachment Troy has to Joel and feeling the most nervous about how is he going to feel about this scene, because so much of the scene is making sure Joel dies in this kind of like unceremonious way. And he's disrespected by these other characters. And first drafts of the game had a lot more mention of Sarah. We wanted to tie Sarah right, because obviously Sarah's life and death had so much impact on Joel and who he is. And we had like, once he got his head bashed in, his last word was like Sarah. And we're just thinking like his mind is like, right, it's not quite operating in the same way. You got neurons firing and he just can't help but think about his daughter. And not only Troy, but a few people on the team felt like that was a little on the nose, that it could read like, oh, we're just trying to really force the parallel between Ellie and Sarah, that he's looking at Ellie and he's saying Sarah. And Troy didn't like that. And I said, like, you know what? Like, I promise you we'll get a version without it. But like, I want to try it. And that's the thing that I try to always do, is like, if someone on the set has an idea, I always try to make sure we have enough time to try it. Cause I don't know, like, I can't predict what magic will happen when you try something fresh. So if someone feels strongly about an idea, I'm like, okay, let's try it. As long as you're willing to try everything I want to do. And to Troy, to his credit, was like, okay, I'll give you everything that's on the page, but I want a version where like I say almost nothing. And I'm like, okay. And that's the version that's in the game.
I think that is a huge breaking point for her. He held sort of this important place in her life, possibly the most important, and he was taken away from her. Taken away before their relationship was fully able to heal. And those are all of the emotions that Ellie sits with in for most of the game. And man, shooting was tough. This game was really tough to shoot. And it was a lot harder working on this game than the first game. And we had to go there. We had to go deep, and we had to really dive into that, or else the game wouldn't work. But it does take a little bit of an emotional toll. You know, it wasn't, but again, I would do it all over again. I love this game so much, and I love this character. And after 8 years of playing this character, I'll go anywhere with her.
I don't know if this takes us to a lighter place or not. When Joel and Ellie it's a flashback and they're in the museum.
Did you know this was here?
Oh, you don't like it. We can head back.
Oh, shut up.
Oh, man.
And it's the birthday and the tape of the rocket launch.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
What is this?
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find.
And then also Ellie's recognition of that gift and what it meant and what it took. And to see her be able to be a child again, if just for a 3-second countdown. It's such a beautiful moment that if all I saw was that, I'd be like, what is this, a Hallmark movie? You know, like, but because of the world it lives in, it's such a deeply tragic moment.
So keep in mind, I love even how, and I'm nothing that was written and crafted in this scene from the top down, from Neil and Hallie, everybody at the team is haphazard. It's not like, well, I guess it happens in a museum. I guess they stumble upon this. Everything is so like, down to literally the pixel is ordained.
Why don't you tell me what you like about it?
I don't know. People in your time, they had it easy.
I guess relatively speaking, sure.
I mean, they didn't need to go to space, but they did it anyway. It's ballsy.
Ballsy. All right, kiddo. Now I get it.
So they build us this set, and because we have to be able to capture those movements, and obviously going into the capsule, you would never be able to do that now, right? So there's this beauty that and fortune that this desecrated world now affords us. It's like, you may not look, the velvet rope is this, thing that now bans you from it. It's like, I can go touch a Monet if I want to now. I can do all of the things that I wasn't allowed, that somehow the social constructs that we had and the they were there for a reason, but there's like, those don't exist. There's no speed limits anymore, man. It's just, the world is truly wild again.
So cool.
How's it smell in there?
Like space. And dust.
that allows us to be able to explore the places that we never would have been able to go.
Whoa.
After you.
And that to me was just, it was an absolutely, truly beautiful, beautiful moment. And again, it's a testament to Ashley. That moment was put in there. The reason why it feels so real is because that's a genuine desire of Ashley. I remember we were flying over, we were flying from LA to London for a press event for the first game. And it was during the Perseid meteor shower. And we were going to try to see if we couldn't see it from our windows on a plane. And we just sat there, I think pretty much the whole of the flight, and just talked about this game, about where we were at, what we wanted. And I was like, what did you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And that's when she told me, and I think she had told Neil before, she's like, I want to be an astronaut. Still kind of want to be, maybe I'll become an astronaut. So that moment exists for Ashley in the same way that Neil giving me the opportunity to sing and play guitar in that is a moment for me. He's an incredibly giving director and writer, and I don't think I'll ever be able to pay him back for what he's given me.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
What is this?
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find. Take it. Close your eyes. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
I do okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
You're welcome, kiddo. What do you say we keep looking around, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
Hey. Welcome to Earth.
Yeah.
That whole sequence is probably one of my favorite parts of the game. Shooting that scene was really special because Troy and I didn't actually get to shoot together a lot during this game. And when we did, they were tough emotional scenes where Ellie was frustrated and mad and hurt and angry. And that scene, when they get into the capsule, it didn't have any of that. And it was just a brief respite in connecting together again in this loving space. But there's this element of sadness underneath. Ellie's getting older, and clearly at that point has already started to question Joel's actions, or is starting to sort of find some of the story doesn't add up. Also, you feel the sadness that Joel is feeling because of the loss of innocence that Ellie is already starting to lose. But I love that moment, and it was that day. I just remember both of us were just so happy to be doing that scene, but also we were sad because it's kind of a sad scene. And especially when you're going back, when you see that scene in a flashback, and it's just, it's hard. It's hard to watch, but I love it.
The idea with the Last of Us, with the first and the second game, is we wanted to explore these pockets of humanity and how they're surviving. Right, there are the hunters, there are the quarantine zones that are very oppressive. There's Bill living out on his own. There's the WLF, that's this very militaristic force that thinks they're going to change the world one bit at a time, and yet they can't finish taking over the city. There's the Seraphites that think they're following their prophet's order, God's order, to like restore some balance to the world. And then there's a place like Jackson, which is like doing their best to create some semblance of the humanity we had, the society we had before the outbreak. So that, right, they have rules, they trade. Maybe it's a bit more of like a socialistic system than a capitalist one. They don't really have a currency, but they take care of each other. They watch movies. They have festivals where they dance. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I'm going to go on a tangent. Like, one of the things we cut pretty late that was pretty cool is that whole dance sequence. There used to be a playable part right before it. So you like, Ellie's like been kind of drinking on her own in like some alleyway. You can hear the festival happening in the distance, and it was playable. So you're walking in the snow, and you walk outside the church, and there's this whole fair, and they have like little games and kids running around. You could like play darts and do all these mini games, and like kids pretending to be a clicker, and they tie like a blindfold on themselves, and they chase each other, and you could play with them. You could go to like the back of the church and find these like two teenagers making out. It was all pretty done. Like a lot of it wasn't super polished. It was like 80%. And we just felt, for pacing purposes, it just slowed things down too much at that point of the story. And it was heartbreaking to cut all that out. But that's one of those like tough decisions you have to make sometimes. Anyways, I went on a tangent, but it kind of talks about the place that Jackson is. Like, you could have a fair where people play. Like, you could have kids playing snowball in the morning, and you can go and like play with them. But it's walled off, and everybody knows beyond those walls is intense danger. So there are people that have to go on patrols and protect this way of life. And Joel and Ellie become, because of their skills and the journey they've been on, and the skills they've accrued, and how, I don't know if brave is the right word. Some, maybe with Ellie it's more reckless, but they are very valuable members of this society, of this town. So for the story, it was important to take some time to establish, okay, here's what's at stake. Here's what they stand to lose. Here's what Ellie stands to lose, most importantly, by going on this journey. That's why we wanted to like kind of slow things down in the beginning and really set up where Jackson is, what are relationships. And then later in the story also show that there are people here that get into fights, that get drunk, that whatever bigoted ways they had before the outbreak, they're still carrying post-outbreak. It doesn't mean they're necessarily bad people, but it's like they're not perfect people. They're flawed people, just like everybody else in the world.
One of the moments that also again broke me was the showing of the dance.
Oh, yeah. I love the dance.
Okay, I have a very serious question for you. How bad do I smell?
Like a hot pile of garbage.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
How about that?
gross. You love it. Every guy in this room is staring at you right now.
Maybe they're staring at you.
Or not.
Maybe they're jealous of you.
I'm just a girl, not a threat.
Oh, Ellie.
when we finally see the dance kind of play out. And the moments of Dina and Ellie together, and Ellie saying, "I'm just a girl."
Mm-hmm. I hate to give Neil credit for anything. It really hurts my soul, but he did write that line, and I pushed back against it. And I don't want to say I was wrong, but I really do love the moment now. And yeah, you know, she's got this best friend who she believes is straight, and she's dancing with her, and she's insecure, like, is Dina flirting with me, or is this just Dina? And nobody, not even Jesse, is like giving it a second thought, because this is just her scrappy best friend dancing with her and being nervous and sheepish. And meanwhile, you've got Ellie, who has Dina wrapped around her, and she's like afraid she's going to give herself away, you know? And like, we have such incredible animators who like focused on pupil dilation and blushing and like sweat, and like, how do you show all of those revealing moments that Ellie can't control? You know, this is Ellie at her most, arguably one of her most out of control moments, right? She is vulnerable in the same way, you know, she's, I would say, arguably out of control when she's leaving the farm, or out of control when she has to fight Abby. But it is these lizard brain moments that allow her to be this holistic character, and it gives her insecurity. And it shows us how much she values Dina.
My name is Shannon Woodward, and I play Dina. Well, first of all, the game means a lot to me. Like, I'm one of the massive fan base. Like, I was obsessed with the first game. I can't even count how many times I've played it. And, you know, I ended up in the game because I had been working with Hallie Gross on Westworld. She wrote on the first season, and we became friends, and we were at a party one night. And I asked her what she was doing over our summer break, and she was like, "Oh, I'm actually, you know, freelancing at this video game company." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, what video game company?" Because I play a lot of games. And she was like, "A Naughty Dog," and I was like, "What? What are you guys writing? The Last of Us 2?" And the game wasn't announced yet, and she just went white, and she was like, "I'm not allowed to talk about it." I was like, "Oh, sorry. Wow, that's amazing that they're making that. I won't tell anyone." I was like, "But I'm such a big fan. Tell Neil, like, I would die to have a line in the game." And there was like a relay back and forth for like 6 months of like, "Oh, he really likes the show," and I was like, "Well, I really like everything he does." Until eventually, I think it must have been, I mean, maybe even almost a year after that, 9 months, she was like, "You know, there is a role, but you'd have to audition." And I was like, what? There's a role?" And I read, and they hired me. But I never needed to do any kind of preparation or anything to do this. Like, I lived in that game with everyone else, you know? Like, I think that's what's so incredible about this game in particular, and what really moved me about the first game is that it feels like it elevates the concept of a novel with a fourth dimension, right? Which is that you feel like you are personally making these decisions. Like, you're personally taking Ellie across the country. Everyone loves Ellie. They took her across the country. We all did. We all saved Ellie's life in that first game. And so for me, like, loving Ellie was not a job. That was like, it was easy.
It's scary. It's scary to sort of be the person that the story is based around, and especially with a game that is loved as much as this game. I wanted to do right by it. But at the end of the day, I wasn't alone, because also was surrounded by other incredible actors that I got to work with. Shannon being one of them, which most of my scenes I got to shoot with Shannon. And she's one of my favorite actors I've ever worked with. And for me, my favorite actors to work opposite of are actors that are prepared and then will let all of that go and live in the moment. Shannon does that in spades. Like, you just don't know what she's going to do, and it's so exciting. And so many of the scenes felt just electric because of that. It was just like a live wire, because we had these scenes and these beautiful words so wonderfully written by Neil and Hallie, and Neil just let us free. And Shannon and I trusted each other implicitly, and we each just sat there and, you know, would take our hands, and each time we shot, we just sort of had this unspoken bond of, I'll follow you, let's fucking go.
I'm curious, for you coming in and writing these two characters, what you wanted to convey, and we can talk about all of the relationships, not just Dina and Ellie as like a queer couple, but also Mel and Owen and Abby. But what it's like writing these characters and writing love that feels authentic, but again, in a time of, you know, they're not going to college and then grad school and then getting married, and kind of what going steady maybe does or does not look like, and kind of how you write an honest relationship in a world that hopefully we never know.
Well, love is hopefully one of those things that can feel more universal, right? That most people can relate to or see some part of themselves in another character that is in love. Like the chemical release, the fixation, the nervousness, the insecurity. We've all been there. And that was a real opportunity to get people on board with Ellie, with Dina, ultimately also with Abby, Owen, Mel. But so when writing Ellie and Dina, what we were really focused on is like, if Ellie and Dina are best friends, and Ellie is ostensibly out to everybody but Joel, though that's only a reveal at the end. In the opening, she is actually out to Joel. But if that's not her issue, it's just about like, I don't want to ruin my friendship. I remember like Neil and I went through pages and pages and pages of in-game dialogue, and then we actually filmed and then reshot the hookup scene in the grow house. And that had like way more dialogue. I think I wrote a page-long monologue, like a full, I mean, fucking Moby Dick-sized monologue about where Ellie is just freaking out about ruining her friendship with Dina and why she's been bottling up these feelings for so long, and how Dina as a friend means so much to her, and she didn't want to ruin that. And I think, gosh, that's just, you know, who doesn't have a friend who's been in that situation? Who can't see that? So like, okay, if you're a straight dude somewhere else, like, yeah, but you know what that feels like for Ellie. Okay, yeah, she's a woman, she's a lesbian, but gosh, I mean, you're rooting for her. She's so nervous. And you've also got this tough motherfucking character, right? She can kill anything. She's, you know, she can do anything she wants. And she fucking... Dina makes her nervous. Dina makes her scared. Dina is the reason that she's like losing her words and her hands are sweating, and like she'd go up against any shambler compared to this fucking flirtatious girl. And that also gave us a chance to like make her feel really multifaceted, to make her feel not impervious, and to give stakes. It's like, this is the thing she's fighting for. She's fighting through herself to get to Dina in the same way she will fight through herself to let Abby go.
Can I ask you a question?
I don't know, can you?
Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being like absolute trash, and 10 being life-altering. How would you rate our kiss from last night?
Why are we still talking about this?
I asked you to rate our kiss.
I don't know.
I give it a 6.
A 6? Wow.
Like a solid 6.
Okay.
There were a lot of people around.
Yeah, but 6.
Oh, what? I mean, now I really want to know how you'd rate it.
I don't think you do.
You're infuriating.
Have you met you?
You make me want to go back outside into that blizzard.
No one is stopping you. I love it. It's another one of my favorite moments in the game because it's just so simple and pure and beautiful of these two teenagers, this fresh love for each other, and just, I love it. I love that scene so much, and I feel like we finally landed on the right version of it. And personally, I think a lot of the versions that we had were great, but that one in particular felt the most real and honest for the game. Like the representation in this game of a queer relationship is so real and so beautiful, and the kindness and how much they love each other, and it's beautiful and it's sexy, and I am so excited that I got to take part in that. To represent a queer relationship in that way, it's that they have a family life. They're raising this adorable child together. It is a wonderful and beautiful relationship across the board.
Hey, where you been?
Hunting took a little longer than I thought. Who's here?
Just come inside.
Ow. Ow. Well, that's quite a grip you got there.
Hey, Tommy.
There you are.
Here, let me take him. Come here, bud. Oh, yeah.
Go.
Here.
Oh, I got it.
Hey.
Hey.
It's good to see you.
You too. He's getting heavy.
No, just a big ball of muscle.
I'm curious what you think Ellie and Tommy's relationship is or will be. And maybe even what it was in the game in that moment. One of my favorite moments in the game is when he taps his finger. It's kind of like the...
Sounds good. Maria good?
Oh, she's fine. We're taking some time apart.
And there's just like a subtle like on the table, and there's so much said with so little. Like, he knows what he's doing, right? I'm projecting. I want to get your I'll quit poisoning the well.
Yeah.
I want to get your take on their relationship.
Yeah, when Tommy finally comes to Ellie after, I mean, it's been past a year. Yeah, Tommy's healed. It's been some time.
So I've been putting out feelers for months now. And this new guy heard my story. He told me about a woman that he traded with while he was moving through California. Described her as built like an ox, traveling with a kid with scars across his face. That's gotta be her.
I feel like that scene just shows how much Tommy is hurting. I mean, I think yes, of course, it's terrible that Tommy is coming to her and putting this on her to do, and also putting the onus on her of saying like, well, I can't do it. I can't go out there and go do this thing, and you're the only one left who can go get this revenge. And that scene is heartbreaking to me because it shows how broken he is, where even he thinks that what's going to solve this pain and this hurt that they're all experiencing is by killing the person who did it.
Reckon it's easy. Forget about her. You sitting all comfy way out here?
Hey,
I'll make her pay.
Tommy.
That's what you said when we got back to Jackson.
Tommy.
Yeah, it's shitty, but I get it. That is a person who is going through so much pain and doesn't know what to do with it. I mean, it feels to me, especially in that scene where Tommy comes to Ellie for the first time and you see him after all that, he's in a bad place. He's in a really bad place. And so is Ellie. I mean, you see her at the house finally after, going on the journey with Abby, and then you come back to the house and see this beautiful home life that she has with Dina. And then she has a panic attack in the barn, and you realize, oh, she's really not okay. She's not doing well. This game absolutely just shows you how hate can absolutely wreak havoc on a family